The IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, and the U.S. military, the various parts of the U.S. military, continue with attacks on Iraq. And, of course, the IDF has turned its attention to Lebanon as well after the firing of rockets by Hezbollah from Lebanon into Israel. And Israel is retaliating. The Lebanese government has effectively banned Hezbollah as a political entity, which is the strongest action they've taken against what has been a parallel government in Lebanon for some time. And the US and the 6 Gulf nations that have had Iranian missiles either intercepted or falling on their property, their territory, have issued a statement saying that this is unacceptable. We don't yet have Kuwait and Bahrain and Saudi Arabia and the others taking offensive action. For the moment, it is still defensive action, trying to intercept the missiles and the drones before they reach the territory of those 6 Gulf nations. But the war is spreading, as it was always clear that it would. And there is an impact on the price. There's an impact on the availability of oil. The Straits of Hormuz is closed. 3 oil tankers have already been attacked. Countries that manufacture LNG have stopped doing so. The price of liquefied natural gas on an exchange in London has gone up by 62%. All of these things are the consequences of America and Israel's decision to act preemptively. One of the consequences is the impact on air traffic. And it is significant because Doha and Dubai particularly are major thoroughfares. It's happened at the airports, even in Iraq. The Iranians have sent missiles and drones towards the Kuwaiti and the Iraqi airports as well. Dr. Guy Leitch is an aviation analyst. It's not quite as big as COVID yet, but potentially it could sort of nudge in that direction. Guy, good afternoon.
Yeah, hi, John, and nice to be with you as always. Well, it is. It's big obviously it's huge for the Middle East, but it's big for South Africa. Look, we've had 15 flights a day from the Middle East, 3 airlines, most of them from either Emirates or Qatar, and that's about 4,500 seats a day. So it's important that obviously it doesn't continue for too long. But in a sense, the breaking news is unconfirmed at this stage. But there are reports coming out that Etihad has already resumed flights out of Abu Dhabi. So I think that they're hoping or thinking that perhaps the worst is over, and that they're going to resort to normal operations soon. And we see that too, by the way, in just the strategy being adopted by Emirates and Qatar, in that they haven't, they've just left their aircraft where they've ended up at whatever outstation they are at, presumably to facilitate a fast restart. So I think that that's what everyone's hoping for. Whether it turns out to be that way, well, we'll have to wait and see.
Because we don't know how many drones and missiles Iran has left. I don't think we can doubt their desire to disrupt the U.S. bases, and there are plenty of those there. They're well protected by anti-missile, anti-drone resources, but it's not limited to those. So there's been a very, very deliberate attempt to disrupt the economies of the Gulf states that are seen to be on the side of the U.S., not so much on the side of Israel, but not sufficiently hostile to Israel. And so we don't know how many drones they have left. We don't know how many missiles they have left, because they'll probably want to keep some in reserve, but otherwise they'll be prepared to empty the shelves, as it were.
Yeah, I think an even bigger part of that question is, well, how many anti-missile missiles do the defensive forces have left? Because the anti-missile missiles are substantially, by a factor of perhaps 100, more expensive than cheap missiles. And there was a real concern voiced by some experts that actually they might simply quite run out of those, which would obviously leave the airports and other key military installations defenseless. We can only hope, obviously, that doesn't happen.
Qatar, or Etihad, who started flying again?
Etihad started flying again. Unfortunately, Etihad is by far the smallest of the three, and they're only operating one flight a day to South Africa. But hopefully it's first signs of a summer. What do they call it? Green shoots.
Yeah. How quickly? I mean, is there a sense that if a disruption of this nature lasts for a day, it takes a day to recover, or if it lasts a day, it takes 3 days to recover? Is there a sort of rule of thumb? If this, they started closing down sort of mid-Saturday afternoon, it's now mid-Monday afternoon, so it's been going for 48 hours. If it lasts another 48 hours, 96 hours, how long does it take to recover fully from that kind of interruption?
Yeah, John, I think, as I indicated earlier, I think it depends on what strategy the airlines continue to run in terms of a remediation strategy. As I said, they've left their aircraft on the ground where they are, which in a sense means that they can just press the go button again, and everything just, like a toy train set, suddenly starts happening again. If they do decide to start moving aircraft back to other areas, perhaps trying to bypass the Middle East hubs entirely, well, then it's obviously going to take much longer to reset. The figure that I have in my mind, but I have no empirical basis for it, is it would probably take at least 48 hours to get the schedules back to normal if they just, as I said, press the reset button.
Because other flights, they flights that would ordinarily, Ethiopian Airlines, for example, on some of their flights would have gone over that region, and they can no longer do so. But they can fly around. They can fly over or fly through airspace, which doesn't carry the same threat as flying through the airspace over UAE and so on carries. That adds time. It adds fuel costs. Is that recovered from passengers? Is there a temporary spike in prices, or do the airlines just allow their budget balance sheets to swallow?
Yeah, no, I think that the precedent for this is the Ukraine war, and the original shooting down of the Malaysian airliner. If you remember, there was just a massive hole in the sky over Dubai that was seeable on the apps like Flight Radar 24. And we're seeing that again here, obviously. But once an aircraft is in the air, it doesn't add a huge amount of additional or marginal cost, if you like, to increase the routing around a troubled spot. Obviously, the biggest interruptions or the biggest costs are leaving them on the ground and having to cancel flights. But I think it is worth pointing out that the big consequence or the knock-on effect of the whole thing is going to be a massive spike in ticket prices, because fuel prices are shooting up, as you've already noted, and I think they're going to continue to shoot up as long as the Straits of Hormuz are blocked. And since fuel prices typically constitute around a third of an efficiently run airline's total costs, well, those get knocked on to passengers pretty quickly. Obviously, if you've booked a couple of months in advance, they're not going to change that ticket price. But if you're on a last-minute .com ticket price, well, then you can expect a substantial increase in your ticket cost.
And I presume that airlines and different insurers have different ways of dealing with this. But the people who've had to spend 2 nights in hotel accommodation in Dubai, for example, because they weren't able to get to their end destination, because this is a war situation, does that change the degree to which insurers compensate passengers who have travel insurance?
There's no quick answer to that question, because it depends, and it depends very much on the carriage conditions offered by that particular airline. Almost every country and airline is a signatory to the Montreal Convention, which gives a whole lot of rights to passengers. And the UAE has gone above and beyond that in offering, at the last count, over 20,000 hotel rooms to stranded passengers. So they've tried hard, but passengers have a right to be fed and watered and generally looked after and got to the destination safely. But they don't necessarily have to be given alternative accommodation, and that's why we see so many passengers when this happens, sleeping on floors. And of course, a war is, when I say floors, I mean terminal airport floors. But of course, this is force majeure when a war breaks out, and insurers are the first to head for the hills and wash their hands of these sort of extra risks.
Dr. Guy Leitch, aviation analyst, thank you very much for talking to us.